Okay, welcome to the guest lecture. We have today a guest talk on beehive monitoring. We have Dr. Umar Anwar, who is a research fellow at the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research, and also at a startup which is called Y-Trace. So Y-Trace is working in the area of beehives and other. Umar did his doctorate from University of Western Australia. I have already shared his short bio, and it's a very interesting project, particularly with its relevance to Internet of Things. So if you will, particularly as you are going through your projects, you would understand that this presentation will give you the insights how to select sensors, how to process the things, what are the issues. Umar would talk about also different problems which he faced during this project, and we would know that it is an iterative process, and we should always in the project should prepare ourselves for unforeseen events. So with no more delay, I hand over to Umar.
So, okay, I will not repeat any of the things that he has said. He has already given you an introduction, so I will jump right into the topic, and I will start with a very, very basic question that bees have been around for a long, long time. The Egyptians in ancient Egypt, they actually had honeybees as well. So, bees have survived this long, and we have never been so worried, but why should we be worried about them now? What is so important about the bees? And the answer is the pollination that they provide. Usually people think it is the honey which is the important bit. Honey, yes, we all like honey, but pollination is the most important part, because without honeybees, 1/3 of our food is gone. And that means a global starvation. And bees are not doing very well because of climate change, fires, there are diseases, and with growing human population, there is a urgency that we keep up with the demand of food. And for that, we need more pollinators. And if bees are on the decline, that means we cannot get the pollination that is required. So usually how it is done? It is very hard work to manage the bees. There is this thing, square box, which is called the honey super, and it has multiple frames, something similar to this. All of them go inside the hive. Some of them have 8, 10, 5 different sizes, and bees build up their comb on both sides, left and right. And when a beekeeper is inspecting, he'll take one frame out, have a look around what the bees are doing, try to find the queen, check if there's any problem, put that back, go with the second one, third one. And these hive boxes can be very, very heavy as well, sometimes 30 kg per box. So you pick up one, you check next one. So it is very hard work, manual inspection. It takes a lot of time. Also, when bees are whenever you open a hive, you are actually destroying the house which is built by the bees. And bees have to again fix it. They have to seal it from the inside. So you cannot open the hive for inspection every day. You have to wait at least a week or 2 before you can open the hive. And if something goes wrong in between, you do not know. You only get to find that out once you have opened it. And if something went wrong 1 week back, by now it may be too late already. Also, if I have 1 or 2 beehives, I can keep them in my backyard. But if I have hundreds of beehives, those hundreds of beehives, those millions of bees require a lot of flowers to get their pollen and nectar from. So I have to move these hives into places where there is a lot of flora. And that flora is not always there. You move it around. Sometimes in spring you prefer a certain place. In autumn you will prefer a different place. And these places can be hundreds of kilometers away from where you live. So whenever you want to inspect a hive, you have to travel all that distance, 400 kilometers, go to the hive site, inspect, and come back. So it takes a lot of time. And traveling, you have to travel with all your workforce, all the people you are working with. That adds to the cost. And if you are going through hives one after the other, after a while you get tired. And once you are tired, there's a good chance that you may miss on something. So there's a chance for manual oversight when you are keeping your bees in a managing the bees in a manual way. So before we move any further, it is important for us to analyze the problem. Since we are going to work with bees, we have to understand what is the life cycle of a bee. So I will quickly go through that how bees are born and how they die and what happens in between. So it all starts with a queen, the single most important bee inside a beehive, and queen can live for up to 5 years. Other bees do not. Queen lays eggs. Eggs hatch into larvae and then they pupate. So egg, larva and pupa, all of these combined, this is called as brood. So from egg until pupa. And this takes about 3 weeks of time. And then the bees hatch, and these small hive bees, they stay inside the hive. They do hive chores such as cleaning the hive, tending to the young ones, maintaining the temperature. And after 4 weeks, these hive bees transition into forager bees. And these forager bees, the ones that we see flying out, these are the forager bees, adult bees. They go outside, and what do? They find food. What is the food for honeybees? Pollen and nectar. They bring it back to the hive. This food is used by the young bees, the pupa, the queen, and the bees inside. And then after 2 weeks of foraging, the worker bee dies. So the life cycle is not very long, about 6 weeks. But there are other impacts which can cause an earlier death. For example, in environment, if it gets too hot or too cold, the bees can die. Or if there is not enough food inside the environment and honeybees cannot bring the food back into the hive, there will be starvation. Or if someone is using pesticides in a garden which is not bee safe, that can also kill the bees. And when the bees start to die before their 6 week age, that is when the problem starts. So if we take a look inside the hive, this is a frame where bees have built a comb. On the top part, you can see the yellow things, they are the pollen. At the very top, the white part, that is honey. And towards the bottom, all the brown area, that is the brood, where we have a lot of pupas inside. Here is a picture of a couple of bees hatching, and this is a frame which is full of honey, and once honey is ready, bees will actually cap it so that it stays safe. Coming to the electronic method of beekeeping. So there are some fundamental components. We have some electronic sensors which are placed inside or around a beehive. These sensors collect data which has to be communicated and then stored. Then we process this data, and in the end we have a user interface where beekeeper can access this information. Then we have some advanced components such as a wireless sensor network of different beehives. We also want long distance monitoring capability. We actually want it to be global, where all the data is available on the internet. Hives can be anywhere in the world, you can be anywhere on the world, but you should have the access to whatever is going on in the hive. And with electronic monitoring, we do not just want to see what is happening right now. With this data, we want to find out what will happen in the future, if the trend is saying that something is going to go wrong. So we want that prediction as well. So what are our major objectives of electronic monitoring? First of all, we want round-the-clock monitoring. And since the sensors are inside the hive, they can continuously monitor the data and transmit it. We do not have to open the hives anymore. If you are opening the hive to check it, that can only be done only a few weeks. But with electronic monitoring, you get round-the-clock monitoring. And since you are monitoring round the clock, if something goes wrong, you find about that immediately. So that improves the detection of disease. Then we have health status prediction, where we can use some machine learning algorithms to predict what's going to happen in the future. And the most important part is we want to save the time and cost for the beekeeper, because beekeeper in the end is running a business. If I sell him a monitoring system which is $1,000, he will not buy it because it does not fit into his business model. He wants an electronic monitoring system which is as low cost as possible, saves him time and labor. Only when he sees this benefit, he will buy the system. Otherwise, that system is of no use. Whenever we are building a monitoring system, we actually have to decide what sensors to use. And for that, you have to do a thorough study. You have to understand the problem, you have to study the literature, and then you will see, okay, these sensors are very important, these are less important, and so on. So let's take an example of Beehive. So we have three categories: very high relevance, where we have temperature, weight, and internal imaging. Then we have high relevance and medium relevance. I will discuss a few during this presentation, but I will start with this one, temperature of a beehive. So monitoring the temperature of beehive is really, really important, because the brood requires the temperature of around 35 degrees to survive. If the temperature goes too high or too low, the brood will die. So what do bees do? Bees actually cluster together and they use their body muscles to maintain this temperature. If it gets too cold, they'll cluster together. If it gets too hot, they will actually go at the hive entrance and they use their wings to cause a flow of fresh air into the hive to bring the temperature down. And that's how they regulate the temperature. So if a colony is strong, has enough bees, it will be able to regulate the temperature. If the colony is not strong, there are not enough bees, they will not be able to regulate the temperature and you will see a lot of fluctuations. So just by monitoring the temperature, if it is stable, that means it's a good, healthy colony. And if it is not stable, that means we have a weak colony. But interestingly, not every relevant sensor is practical. Relevance and practicality are two different things. Let's take the example of internal imaging. On paper, it looks really good. You put a camera inside the hive, you can always see what is happening inside the hive, you can live stream it and job is done. You can actually practically see what is happening inside. But when you start to see this, cameras, are they cheap? Well, they are becoming cheaper, but if this is a frame and I want to see what is happening, if I put a camera here, what will my camera see? This part of the frame. There are 8 or 10 different frames. What is happening in different places? I do not know. If I want to monitor all of that, how many cameras should I put? One this side, one that side. Will I be able to put 16 cameras inside a hive? No, it's not practical. Again, if we talk about accuracy, cameras are capturing videos or images, okay? No person is going to be able to sit 24/7 and look at the imaging. You want an algorithm to process that video feed or images and see what the bees are doing. And with those algorithms, there are issues with accuracy. Cameras are not very power efficient. Even if you get a small camera, which is, let's say it is power efficient, it is generating data from a remote site that you have to transmit. The transmission of data takes a lot of power. You want to process the data, again takes power, so there are issues with energy efficiency. As I said, computationally simple, no, you need sometimes very, very big models to process this video data. Deployability is another issue, because what bees do is, if bees do not like something inside the hive, they start covering it with bee wax. So only after a couple of days, there will be bee wax all over the camera surface. Cameras will not be able to see anything. So sometimes things which look very, very relevant, they are not practical, and internal imaging is just one example of that. So coming to the challenges, as we have discussed two of them already. First of all, we need to know which sensors are relevant. We also have to find out which ones are practically usable. And third one is balancing cost and accuracy. Okay, let's say for a temperature sensor, I want to be accurate. You have to decide what degree of accuracy you want. If you want an extremely accurate temperature sensor which costs $70 or $80, and there's another one which is a bit less accurate but costs $2, which one you should go for? Less accurate one, $2 one, it is fine, because we are not measuring temperature to a very high degree of resolution. We just want to say whether it is close to 35 or not. So you have to choose something which is actually more appropriate for the product that you are aiming for. Power consumption is a big problem with remote beehive monitoring because these hive sites, as I have said earlier, they are in remote areas. You do not have any AC power to charge these systems. These systems have to operate on batteries. Either you make a system extremely power efficient, that the battery will last 1 year at least, then you can replace the battery, or you provide it with a mechanism so that it can recharge the battery. For example, something like this, a solar panel. You can go with bigger ones, but something as small as this, easily deployable. When there's some sun out, it will recharge the battery. The battery provides you some backup, and then even when there are cloudy days, the battery has enough backup, and after that you can, when their sun is out, the solar panel can charge the batteries. And then you have to decide on how you can transmit the data, and data transmission again is very power extensive process. So you have to minimize the amount of data. If you are generating a lot of data, you will require a lot of power, which you often do not have. Coming to the part of communication, so from remote sites, one of the options is to use satellite communication. With satellite communication, it depends how much data you are generating, because for very small packets, satellite communication works well, because the use of energy, the power increases significantly with large packets of data. With beehive monitoring, if we are using sensors such as audio, accelerometers, they are generating a lot more data. And satellite communication, again, if you are monitoring data very frequently, every 10 minutes, satellite communication may not be for you. It will cost you a lot, and power it requires is significantly high. Another option is to use the communication network. Let's say this is Australia, and we have this communication map of 3G, 4G, and 5G. Mostly it's dominated by 4G. And you can see there are so many areas where there is no coverage in Australia. And that is understandable. We have very dense populations in very small areas. We have pockets of that. Rest of it is empty. So why would anyone deploy their infrastructure where no one is using it? But beekeepers do go to areas where there is nothing, just forest or bush, and they want to collect it. So what can we do? One of the options is NB-IoT, Narrow Band Internet of Things. Again, powered by Telstra, using the same infrastructure. But for 4G, when you get a communication of around 30 kilometers with NB-IoT, this distance from a cellular tower can be up to 100 kilometers. So this is a much bigger area that can be covered. So this is one of the options. So just to summarize what we have discussed so far and to give you a context of what we will be doing later, we have three major questions. First of all, which sensor should be used to design a low power and long range beehive monitoring system? Secondly, is it possible to reduce the system design cost by using soft sensing prediction and replace expensive or difficult to use sensors such as weighing scale? I'll come to this later. And can machine learning algorithms assist in selection of sensors for specific tasks? So we still do not know which sensors to use. Can we develop tools which will help us do that? Let's see. So coming to the design of the system, the monitoring system that I designed during my PhD, and we are still working on it. We are trying to deploy as many of these as possible for some data collection. So it has temperature, humidity, pressure, gas sensor, accelerometer, a microphone, as well as a weighing scale. It has a solar panel. There's a battery inside. It can communicate using NB-IoT as well as LoRa, and we have a SD card inside which can store the data. So we designed the system using off-the-shelf components that were very easily available. We designed our own PCB, which is a 2-layer motherboard. It can house different sensors in different locations. This was the very first system that we made. It took a lot of space on the side of the frame, didn't look nice, but again, it was just to get a feel of if the systems and sensors will work or not. We tried to make it as power efficient as possible. So it has a 2% duty cycle. That means it transmits data every 10 minutes. And in those 600 seconds, it stays up for around 12 seconds, collects the data and transmits, and then goes to sleep. We are using Fourier extraction to minimize the amount of data. For example, we are sampling data at 4 kilohertz. So if I take 1 second of audio recording, that means I have only for audio with 16 bits per sample, we get significantly large amounts of data, about 8 kilobytes. So how do we transmit that? Because 8 kilobytes, it may seem small. It may seem you very small because we are talking about gigabytes and terabytes. But when you are transmitting from a remote site, 8 kilobytes is a lot of data. So what we do is we have a small processor inside this board, and that extracts the important frequency components from this signal, and we only transmit the important frequency components. We are able to minimize the data for transmission. So a total of 6 kilobytes of data that we are collecting is reduced to around 91 bytes for transmission. We are able to communicate data in real time. The board is capable of doing both NB-IoT and LoRaWAN. I'll come to these towards the end again. And then we evaluated about 9 different sensors during this project and 40 features to see which ones are useful and which ones are not. Just to give you a quick recap of how much data we collected a total of 2,170 days of data from 3 different sites using 8 sensor systems. This was done over a period of 18 months, and we collected 144 samples per day. That is with an interval of 10 minutes. The sites were Capel, which is towards the south, UWA campus here, and Durian Bay, which is towards the north. So coming to one more sensor data, which is hive weight data. This to me is one of the most important things that you can monitor from a beehive. So this is the weight of a hive from June, a couple years back, 3 days of data. So the lines, they actually mark 3 separate days. And if you look closely to this data between 8 to 9 a.m., do you see a sharp dip in the weight? Goes down very sharply and then goes up. So what is happening is, this is the time when the temperature outside becomes appropriate and bees leave the hive in large number to find pollen and nectar. And when bees leave the hive in large number, you get a dip in the weight. And when they start coming back with the pollen and nectar, the hive weight goes up. Then at night, bees actually consume that nectar to keep themselves warm. There is evaporation as well. The water from that nectar evaporates and the hive weight goes down. On some days, we see these odd fluctuations in the hive weight, like over here. And it doesn't make sense. Why would weight go up and down like this? But you have to be aware of what is going on. And if you look at the weather data and plot the rain for the same day, that we are collecting the weather data using BOM, you can see it rained on that day. And when it rains, the water forms a puddle on top of the hive, then it goes off, and that actually causes all the fluctuations in the weight. And how do we measure the weight? These are the hives. Underneath these hives, you will see these silver things made out of aluminium. They are heavy, these weighing scales, and they costed a lot. We had them manufactured here in WA, and one scale was around $700. Now, if you have a lot of hives and you want to deploy all of them, or equip all of them with these weighing scales, that means a lot of money. So weight data we know is important, but spending $700, that doesn't work out. So we thought, okay, can we do something about it? Can we estimate the weight of the hive using other sensors so that we get the information, but we do not have to spend this much money on the weighing scales? So that is what the core part of my PhD was, hive weight estimation. So after some playing around, we came up with the final list of sensors. We made a new system. This was our new system, a very simple system. And what happens is, we replace the top bar of the hive, the wooden bar, with this thing, and that sensor board that you see can fit very easily inside. So it is something which is not taking any extra space. A bit more depth to this one, but our system becomes part of the frame. And we use the data from this system along with data from BOM. We use artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we estimate the weight of the hive. To be more precise, what is the change in the hive weight? We monitor that change, whether it's going up or down. So just to give a very quick overview of what machine learning is. Let's say we have a hive and we are collecting sensor data from this hive. Our system can do that. At the very same time, we ask beekeepers to go and assess this hive and provide us the assessment, whether the bees are doing good or bad. Now we have sensor data and we have a feedback from the beekeeper from the same hive. We pushed that into a machine learning algorithm, and that algorithm tries to make sense of sensor data and this assessment and tries to learn what data translates into what assessment. And with enough quality and quantity of data, if we train the machine learning algorithm adequately, what we can do is we can take the beekeeper assessment out, we can only provide the sensor data, and the machine learning algorithm will generate an assessment which will be similar to that of a beekeeper. So what this does is, beekeeper can sit at home, the machine learning algorithm will use the sensor data and provide the beekeeper the feedback that he had to earlier go to the hive site to get. So this is a very, very short definition of it. But in our case, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to collect electronic sensor data from inside the hive, the weather data from BOM, and estimate what? The weight of the hive. So for this project, we had to collect the weight because that was the ground truth. That is what we needed for training. But once the training is complete, the weighing scale goes out of the equation and is not required anymore. So this is one of the models. Since this is not a unit for machine learning, I will not go into a lot of details for this one, but we collect sensor data from the hives, we extract features, all these features go into a model, and then we generate weight estimates per frame. So the orange, the green you see, green dots on the top right, that is the actual weight of the hive. And the crosses, orange ones, they are what we have estimated. So with estimations, again, they are estimates. Sometimes they will be accurate, sometimes there will be problems, sometimes they will over predict, sometimes they will under predict. So again, some details of the model that we don't have to go into, but if we look at the numbers and we compare the actual weights with the estimated weights, we can see our error is 0.55%. That is less than 1% error. That means the accuracy of this machine learning model is quite good. But how that accuracy comes in is actually not that straightforward. For example, in examples A and B, you can see in example A, the hive variations weight variations were not a lot, and we were able to track it reasonably well. In B, the hive gained a lot of weight. We tracked it well. But in example C and D, what happens? In example C, we are over predicting the weight. At the end of the day, the weight should be here. Where are we getting to? At this point, we are over predicting. In this example, the weight should, at the end of the day, should be here. What are we doing? We are under predicting. So what happens is, when your errors have a profile where you sometimes over predict and sometimes under predict, that goes in your favor. For example, this is a histogram of all the errors on the test set. So this is 0, means how many examples where we had 0 error? You can see that bar is quite high. Where we had positive errors, as we go forward, the errors decrease. Where we had negative errors, as we go on that side, this decrease. But this is centered around 0 and has a Gaussian distribution. This means on some days we over predict, some days we under predict, and what is the net result? They cancel each other out. So if I calculate my weight for 10 days, on 4 or 5 days I did a very good calculation. On 2-3 days I over predicted, and 2-3 days I under predicted. These two errors cancel each other out. And this is something when you track the weight of the hive for 300 days. So again, cumulative. You see, some days we are under predicting, some days we are over predicting, but at the end of the day, we kind of end up where we want to be. These sharp changes in the hive weight, they are a result of beekeepers playing with the hive, because sometimes they will add supers. When there's too much honey, they will take it out, put an empty box. So these weight fluctuations will happen at this point of time. You have to tell actually the system, okay, now this is the new weight, this is the new system, how many empty frames, and system will automatically adjust the weight as per that scenario. So coming to the third part where we said, can we use machine learning algorithms to decide which sensors to use? Yes, we can. So one part of the machine learning model that I used was called self-attention, and it was at the very beginning of the model. And that part actually learns what parts of the input have what correlation with other inputs. So it is trying to make sense of the inputs, which is important, which input is important, more important, and which is less important. And if when the model has learned that and has been trained, and we plot those attention weights, this is one of those weights, and this is for the time based relationships. So we are collecting 48 samples per day. So a day has 24 hours. If I collect 2 samples per hour, that gives me 48 samples. And this is that plot. If you count these number of blocks, you will see 48 blocks on x-axis, 48 on y-axis, and this is providing me information of what times are important. So the bright spots that you see means these are important times. This is coming from a machine model. And if I check, that time is from 4 to 6 a.m. That is the time where bees leave the hive in large number to find pollen and nectar, and we were getting that sharp dip. So machine learning model was able to see, okay, this is an important part because this dictates whether the weight will increase or not. Also later in the day, this is the time around 4 p.m. where a lot of flowers generate nectar, and that plays an important role whether the weight will go up or down. This is the other attention map, and this is giving us relationship between different sensors. First one was relationship between different times. This is relationship between different sensors, and all the names of the sensors and their features, they are mentioned on the x-axis and y-axis, and we can see that on the top left the weights are significantly higher, and on the right part we see a lot of black spots. That means the weights there are not very high. So machine learning model is actually informing us that the information it is extracting about weight estimation is more dependent on those sensors and less dependent on these sensors. So now if we know these sensors are less important, what can we do? We can remove these sensors from the system. If I remove this sensor from the system, this means whatever current the sensor was using, I am saving that now. It was generating data that I had to transmit. I'm saving that. That sensor was costing me money. I do not have to spend money on that sensor anymore. So I can use these attention weights to optimize my monitoring system. Similarly, I can do another optimization as well. If I go back to my previous slide, I can optimize my system to collect more data at this time because it has more information, and collect less data otherwise. So I can put more value to the power that I am spending in collecting the data. So what we did was we actually put this theory to test. From my test set, I removed all the sensor data which was not important, and I evaluated again for weight estimation. And as we can see, so this is the column when we were using all of the features, and this column we used only the important features which were suggested by the monitoring system. And our error increased from 19.7 grams to 19.9 grams. This 0.2 grams error increase is nothing compared to the gains that we achieved by reducing the power consumption and other stuff. And in this case, there is absolutely nothing to select from. They are absolutely the same, these parameters. So trying to conclude this thing, one more thing that we have done is we have developed a system where our communication is based on a hybrid of LoRa and NB-IoT. So our system can use both. But with LoRa, what is the problem? With LoRa, if you want to use LoRaWAN, you need a LoRaWAN gateway. If you go 400 kilometers out there in the jungle, do you have a LoRaWAN gateway? You do not. So you cannot use LoRa. NB-IoT works really well because you have some coverage. But NB-IoT chip is expensive and it consumes a lot of power. So if you have to deploy that NB-IoT module in each and every system, that adds to the cost. What if I can have this NB-IoT system in only one, and rest of them can use LoRa module and transmit all their data to this one system, and that system can use NB-IoT for long range transmission. So for 9 systems out of 10, I do not need NB-IoT module. I save power, I save cost. Only one system has to have the NB-IoT module. It collects the data from all the other systems and transmits on its behalf. Just like a gateway at a Wi-Fi router at your home. You have so many devices which are connecting to the one gateway, and only that router has a DSL connection. So NB-IoT acts as a backbone of a transmission, and for local network we use LoRa. So but to come to this point, we had to actually understand what are the benefits of both LoRa and NB-IoT. With this one, we actually achieve cost effectiveness, and we also make beehive monitoring accessible to a wider range of beekeepers. But now I have a question from you. Is there a problem with this approach? Maybe a problem or two. Can you think of something? Yes.
Since we have only one NB-IoT, if it stops working for some reason, all communication will be stopped.
Very true. Very true. So if that system fails, all other systems are relying on that system for communication. My communication will not work anymore. I have to go and fix that system. If I had each and every system equipped with NB-IoT, one NB-IoT goes down, the other 9 will continue to transmit. So this is one problem. What is the other problem? There is one more. Okay, I'll give you a hint. It's related to power. Yep. Yes. So
Not only the transmission, but also used as a sync node.
it has to be open all the time. It has to be awake and listening to the data from other devices all the time. For other devices, I can collect the data, transmit, and go to sleep. But for the router, I cannot put it in the sleep mode. It has to stay awake all the time so that it can receive the data. What I have done is, yes, my system has to stay awake all the time. But with NB-IoT, I do not keep the NB-IoT mode awake all the time. I keep listening to the data, keep adding it to a pool, and when that pool reaches a significant size, wake NB-IoT up, transmit all of the data, put NB-IoT module to sleep. Only the LoRa part stays awake because it is using LoRa to communicate with the local network. That part is awake all the time. This way we are able to save some of the power. But again, keeping a system on with LoRa all the time, that again consumes a lot more power than the other systems.
Once the data is coming from a LoRa and the IoT, you have to first translate it and then again send it over to the IoT. There has to be some type of a processing involved. I mean,
It's a simple binary string that comes in. With LoRa, LoRa transmits a packet which is a string of numbers. That gets stored into the SD card of the NB-IoT system. When NB-IoT wakes up, it reads one string at a time and just transmits it. It is simple picking up the data and transmitting it because it is already in a format which my system understands.
okay.
So there is no need to trust.
Actually, okay, so you know the LoRa bands header and
We are not using LoRaWAN. We are using raw LoRa. Simple raw LoRa transmission.
okay, not the LoRa.
Not LoRaWAN at all, because we do not have LoRaWAN gateway. We don't have to have those complexities.
That's it.
Simple binary data comes in as a string, gets stored, and NB-IoT picks it up and transmits.
Since you use like not only a router, it's like sync node and a gateway transformed to the LoRa protocol data framework to another data
NB-IoT. So as it's the same question, because LoRaWAN, for LoRaWAN you have to have a protocol where there are certain headers and stuff. I have implemented my own very simple basic LoRa network where I transmit the binary data at a certain frequency, and I just at the end check if the CRC is there or not. I do a CRC checksum. If there is a communication error or something happens, CRCs do not match, I discard the data. But if the CRCs match, that means this data is okay. Just dump that binary data into a file. When NB-IoT wakes up, it reads that binary data and transmits it via MQTT to my server. No translation required at all. So time to conclude this. So what we have done is we have designed a beehive monitoring system with the focus on Australian beekeeping industry. And what were those problems? Because monitoring systems are available throughout the world. But what they use is for communication, they either use 4G or they use Wi-Fi. That works in Europe, it works in America, does not work in Australia. Because we do not have 4G coverage everywhere. We only have Wi-Fi gateways available in populated areas, and we do not have populated areas in a lot of regions. So we developed a system which now uses 4G based NB-IoT and LoRa, so we get a lot bigger coverage, and we also have found a way to reduce the cost of the system, because the most expensive part, which was the weighing scale, we are not using that anymore. We are using an AI model to generate the weight estimates, which has reduced the system cost. So system inside thing that is in here costs around $200. Weighing scale, $500. Overall system cost was $700. Take $500 away, what are we left with? $200. So price reduction from $700 to $200. That is a significant reduction. We have developed world's first AI model for beehive weight estimation. We also have leveraged the hybrid of NB-IoT and LoRa communication for beehive monitoring, and we have achieved system design optimization using machine learning. So what are the takeaway points? Whenever you have to solve a problem, you have to decide whether the problem is at a level where you can solve it or not. Every problem is complicated. You have to divide it and convert it into small blocks that you can tackle. Maybe your job is only to tackle one problem, and that's more than enough. If not, you can take turns. But bring it down to a level where it is tackleable. And then you have to have a clear understanding of the problem. For this project, my PhD was in what? Was it in beekeeping? No. What do you think my PhD was in? Electronics, machine learning. But I spent more than half of my time working with bees, understanding the beekeepers, the problems, because unless I understand this problem, I cannot come up with a solution. And sometimes we are very much consumed with an idea that we get that this is what we want to do. You have to think, is this what the beekeeper or end user wants or needs? You have to do that, because if you want to sell your idea, you have to solve someone's problem. You do not want to take a fancy road, because that may lead you to nowhere. Sometimes a simple solution is the best solution, because it may take you to a place where a solution which actually someone requires. And before you start a problem, you have to define your objectives. Be very clear in what you want. Once you have defined your objectives and goals, then you can find the tools that you can use to solve them. A lot of times what we try to do is we try to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to. For example, did I invent a new machine learning model to solve this problem? No, I used a transformer. Transformers have been here for many years. People were using it for language models and other stuff. But I understood what transformer can do. I understood my problem. I knew I can pick up this transformer, tweak it a bit, adjust it to my needs, retrain it, and I can get my job done. So then you can always, once you understand the problem, you can always find something that can solve the problem. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Yes. What we selected was, so during this PhD, for most of the time, I did not know what to select. I put all the sensors that in the literature suggested that this can work. I had 3 years to work with it. Again, depends how much time you have to play with. So all the sensors which I thought, okay, these are practical because I'm designing a system for Australia. My selection criteria was something that does not consume a lot of power, something that can be deployed in a hive, and something that does not generate a lot of data. If a thing fit this criteria, okay, I said, okay, I will put it in my system, collect a lot of data, and then in the end see what is usable and what is not. I'll give you a very good example. You can sit down, you can sit down. You don't have to stand. For example, let's go to this slide. So you can see all the sensors that we are using, this time and week information. So which time the data was collected, that information is there. Which week of the year it was collected, that information is there. Different features from temperature, humidity, wind, rain coming from bomb, carbon dioxide, pressure, a lot of data from audio, and we realized, okay, some of them is more important than the others, and some accelerometer data as well. And if you look at this, accelerometer has 3 axes, X, Y, and Z. You see very dark lines, right? Literature was full of information that accelerometers can pick a lot of information from bees, because when bees actually find food, they do a dance inside the hive, and accelerometer can pick up those vibrations. But I saw nothing from that at all. Was that information which is available in the literature wrong? No, it's not. It's overwhelmingly there. My problem was that we were deploying our system in a way that the vibrations were not reaching my accelerometer. My system was very loosely connected. It was kind of hanging. So as soon as we moved to this system, where this motherboard becomes part of the frame, using these systems, I am picking up a lot of vibrations. So again, you have to sometimes monitor the data, go back, okay, now this is what I saw from the data, this sensor I should keep, this I should remove. So it does not come instantaneously. Machine learning model suggested, okay, this is important sensor, this is not, I kept that. I improved my design, and then I found out, okay, I can keep that. So it is a process which you have to go through.
So I know that you have tried so many features, and finally you draw this X map to find the correlation.
Yes. Yes, and this is what we reduced to. We were able to reduce a lot of different features because they were not providing enough information.
It's a huge effort to try everyone one by one.
That's why machine learning model does that for you. If you try them one by one, it takes a lot of effort and time. But with machine learning model, I got this window after the training, and I knew that I have to keep those and discard that. Manually takes a lot of time. Machine learning model can speed up the process.
But the raw data you need to get by yourself.
Exactly. That is the important part. You have to collect a lot of data. Only then you can.
From everything.
Yes.
And find their correlation.
Exactly. Exactly. You have few weeks. Again, depends. For example, if you're collecting data from a controlled environment where you know if you deploy a sensor, you have power, it will keep on working. For me, I deployed a sensor in the beehive, drove 300 kilometers, came back, saw there's no data, nothing is working. Drive back again next week, see what is wrong, fix it. So yeah, with that there are a lot of challenges. If you have some place where you're working closely, you can fix it very rapidly. That's a very good question, because beekeepers, they tend to see what is going to happen day to day. But once you go and put a hive in there, you let it be there for at least a few weeks or months. So what they are interested in overall trend, because in the middle of spring there may come a day where it's rainy or something else or whatever, and bees may not go out at all, and that day your weight will go down. But what you are interested in, if your hive is gaining weight over a period of time or not. So yes, in our case we were interested in monitoring the weight for a prolonged period of time, because that is what we want to see. But what is more important for any application is to get an error histogram like that. If your error histogram has error which is centered around 0, that means for most part you are getting very small error. And then there is some positive and then there is some negative. Overall, these errors start to cancel each other out. Any other question? Yep.
It seems like the only predictor feature is the weight of the.
For now, yes. For this project, that is the only thing we are estimating. Yes. Yep.
The
Weight is not a feature. Weight is not going as an input. We are not using past weight as an input. We are assuming that we don't know anything about weight of the hive. The weather data and the data from inside the hive. Inside the hive, whatever is happening inside the hive, that is coming from this board. The weather data we just fetch from the website, from BOM, for a different site location. That goes as the input of the model, and what comes out is the estimate of the weight variation, whether the weight has gone up or down.